Welcome to the Wicket.
Hello, and yes, it's time for another episode of your favourite cricket chat at The Wicket, the podcast brought to you by Arab News. I'm your host, Brian Murgatroyd, and with me as ever to discuss what's happening in the sport locally in the Gulf, regionally in Asia and worldwide, Arab News columnist Jon Pike and Arab News cricket reporter Subas Humagain. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Brian, and hello, Subas.
Hi, John. Hello, Brian.
And in this show, there's the ICC Women's T20 World Cup to unpack as New Zealand won the final against South Africa to claim their first title in the format. We look back on Pakistan's drought-breaking win over England in the second test of their series in Multan. We reflect on a dramatic test match in Bengaluru, where New Zealand ended a winless streak of their own against India. We chat about off-field dramas in Bangladesh. We speak about the ongoing West Indies men's white ball tour of Sri Lanka. There's the Asian Cricket Council's T20 Emerging Asia Cup in Oman to discuss. Nepal's men are back on the winning trail in a T20I series against the USA, and we give Subas free rein on that triumph. And we also chat about the USA women's ongoing one-day international tour of Zimbabwe. On top of all that, as ever, Subas and Jon tell us what's caught their attention in the world of cricket in the recent past. Plenty to discuss then, as ever, so let's get cracking. There can only be one place to start, and that's New Zealand's win in the Women's T20 World Cup. The White Ferns lifted the title for the first time, beating South Africa by 32 runs in the final in Dubai. Sophie Devine's side made 158 for 5, with important contributions from veteran opener Susie Bates, Amelia Kerr and Brooke Halliday, whose 38 from 28 balls took the side past the 150 mark. Then they bowled effectively as they had done all tournament, and after South Africa got away to a good start with Laura Volvaert and Tasmin Brits adding 51 in just under 7 overs, wickets fell at regular intervals, with seamer Rosemary Mayer and leg spinner Amelia Kerr taking 3 wickets apiece. Kerr finished as the tournament's top wicket taker with 15 victims. They had 3 bowlers, in fact, in the top 10 wicket takers and 3 others in the top 10 run scorers. For South Africa, it was another case of so near and yet so far as they finished runners-up for the second time in succession. Subas, what a triumph for New Zealand, who, let's remember, ended a run of 10 successive losses coming into this tournament when they won their opener against India. But I just wonder, were they the best side in the tournament? They lost heavily, remember, to Australia, and they didn't face England in the group stages. What do you think?
Well, in a tournament like this, I think it's about who has the momentum more than who is the quality in the side. And New Zealand, they started off bright. Skipper Sophie Devine admitted after lifting the trophy that India win was the pivotal part in their triumph. And they had different match winners in every match. Their contribution from all the players. And yes, they struggled against Australia, but I think they overcome from that quickly to continue the form. And say final against West Indies, I think that was fiercely competed, and they got lucky with some misfields from the opposition and ultimately paved the way to the final. And in final, after putting up that score, I think it was their title to lose, and they bowled brilliantly once again. And so on paper, they were not the side we rated. I mean, the team with no wins in last few months went on to win the cup. I think this is one for the ages. What a turnaround, and I think it will go down the folklore on how comeback can be made in the World Cups.
Well, Jon, we've spent a lot of time on this podcast over the past year questioning New Zealand and the fact they've been an ageing side. But this was a triumph for their 2 senior players, Captain Sophie Devine and Susie Bates. On top of that, though, they had plenty of young players who put their hands up. players like Eden Carson, the spinner, who bowled superbly in power plays, and there was an opener, Georgia Plimmer, as well. Suddenly, the future looks a lot brighter for them, doesn't it?
Yes, suddenly it does. Bates, now the most capped woman in international cricket, 163 ODIs and 171 T20s, is 35. Devine is 37, Tahua is 34, all in the twilight of their careers, which have seen them really as pillars of New Zealand women's cricket deal with a lack of depth and limited financial resources. I think it's really a fitting reward for those years of persistence and perseverance. Now we've got Kerr at 24, the star of the show. Plimmer is 20, Carson's 23, Fran Jonas is 20, Mayer's 25. So there is a nucleus of younger players to take on the mantle.
And John, what about South Africa? Another case of so near yet so far for them. But is it now possible to argue that their triumph in the semi-final against champions Australia took more out of them than they realised and left them drained for the main event?
Difficult to know, but after Laura Bobart's dismissal, the energy did seem to dissipate. 8 of the 9 wickets to 4 were caught against some pretty astute bowling and fielding. And perhaps South Africa were taken aback by New Zealand's nothing-to-lose approach. Prior to the match, South Africa looked to be the strongest, more settled side, but New Zealand's openers took on South Africa, who became unsettled, and they bowled 10 wides and 3 no-balls, and that's not something to do in any 20-over match, let alone a final. It looks like New Zealand's game plan worked.
Subas, New Zealand squeezed past West Indies in the semi-final in a low-scoring thriller in Sharjah. But despite that disappointment for Hayley Matthews' side, can we still regard it as a successful tournament for them? They did beat England to make it into the last 4, something they hadn't done for 7 years. And Deandra Dottin eased back into the setup effectively, didn't she?
Certainly, Brian. Our success and a shot away from competing for the title. I think hardly anyone thought they would have gone past the group ahead of England. Even that England match, I think they left the opposition shell-shocked after that power play. And the way Matthews and Kane has also batted, Dottin, she eased into the side like she never left. But the campaign has given a lot of confidence to youngsters like Ziada James and Ashwini Munishar. Yes, they didn't have impact, but I think this journey will help them grow into the squad going forward, and as the time goes on, they'll only grow.
And John, what about Australia's failure to defend their title, losing in the semi-final to South Africa? Should we have seen that 8-wicket defeat coming in the absence of captain Alyssa Healy, sidelined with a foot injury? And is it the end of an era for them?
It's always easy to be wise after the event. They do have the depth of resources, but is it possible for a team to actually win every single match? I guess you could argue on the law of averages they were going to lose one at some point, and for some unusual reason they didn't perform on the day by their own admission. The average age of the squad is now 28, in a range of 21 to 34. Both Healy and Alyssa Perry are 34. 3 others are over 30. Maybe the result is going to be a catalyst for a change, or certainly a slow evolution.
Well, both of you now, starting with John, do you regard the tournament as a success? And if so, or if not, why?
Well, success in terms of what? That it took place is a success, given its late switch from Bangladesh. It seems to have passed off without too much trouble. What about viewing figures, especially the impact of none of England, Australia or India reaching the final? I think to wait on that. Advertisers and sponsors probably didn't want a New Zealand-South Africa final. So for those who dislike the authorities' focus on top teams getting through to finals so as to maximise revenues, it was a success for the underdogs. This was not just New Zealand, but also West Indies in the semis. We were under-resourced at home in terms of facilities. And I think the ICC probably regard it as a success because the board meeting after the tournament announced a raft of measures to boost the competitiveness of associate member teams in preparation for an expansion of the ICC women's events in the 2028-2031 cycle.
Yes, quite a few metrics gone through there by John. Subas, what about you? Was the tournament a success?
Yes, I think it was a successful year on the verge of getting a new champion. The level level of competition has risen, and we talked about the golfing class getting narrower and how better it could be. Title contenders India and England couldn't pass the group stage. Defending champions got humbled in the semi-finals by South Africa, and South Africa, who looked unbeaten, I think they failed to get past the final hurdle, and all of a sudden, final looks to be the new semi-final for South Africa. Consecutive runner-ups for women, similar for the men's side, but overall, if you see, like John mentioned, I think it was a tournament for the underdogs.
Well, there's no rest for champions New Zealand and no chance for them to enjoy their triumph, at least in the short term, as they've headed to India for a white ball series against Harmanpreet Kaur's side, with India determined to secure revenge for the loss in the tournament opener that set them on the road to a group stage exit. The first one-day international between India and New Zealand is on Thursday, the 24th of October, and we'll talk about that next time here at the Wicket. In Multan, Pakistan's men levelled their three-match test series against England with what was ultimately a thoroughly conclusive win by 152 runs. The home side took a series of massive gambles. They dropped three of their big guns, Babar Azam, Shaheen Shah Afridi and Nazim Shah. They opted to play on the same pitch as the first test, which had yielded such a run fest, and they opted to pack their team full of spin bowlers. And having won an important toss and opted to bat first on a surface expected to deteriorate as the match went on, Pakistan made the highest total of the match, 366, and then, after England threatened parity or even a lead after reaching 211 for 2 in reply, the spinners, led by left-armer Noman Ali and off-spinner Sajid Khan, broke through and helped Shan Masood's team to a morale-boosting success. The highlights of the test were 118 on debut for Kamran Ghulam, the man given the heavy responsibility of taking Babar's place, while Noman Ali took 3 for 101 and 8 for 46, and Sajid Khan returned figures of 7 for 111 and 2 for 93. It was the first time two bowlers had shared all 20 wickets in a test since Bob Massey with 16 and Dennis Lilly with the other 4 did likewise at Lord's for Australia against England way back in 1972. For England, Ben Duckett made an excellent 114 in the first innings, but he couldn't find sufficient support, and a first innings deficit of 75, plus a rash of dropped catches in Pakistan's second innings, including Salman Ali Agha twice in 3 balls before he'd reached double figures en route to 63, proved too great a hurdle for England to overcome. John, a first win for Pakistan at home in 4 years in Test. That's an amazing statistic on its own. And Shan Masood's first win as captain. It was built on that debut 100 by Kamran Ghulam. What a performance by him to come in for Babar and perform straight away. Just wondering what you made of the way he played. He's no callow youngster. He's 29 with 60 first-class games behind him. But have Pakistan now found someone who can slot into their middle order for a period of time?
Well, one swallow doesn't make a summer. He would have been highly motivated, having waited a very long time for his chance. He had to graft Pakistan at 19 for 2. He defended, or left alone, 138 of his 224 deliveries. I think it's likely he'll get a run in the team. His domestic record is good. Only 12 players have scored more runs in the Quaid-e-Azam Trophy since he made his debut in 2013.
Yes, a fine performance from Kamran Ghulam. But Subas, what about Pakistan's spinners, Noman and Sajid? How impressed were you with them? Yes, they were bowling on a used surface that increasingly assisted the spinners, but they still had to cope with England's attacking approach, which has unnerved more experienced bowlers at test level than them, hasn't it?
Well, Pakistan had a plan with these two, and they used it to perfection. The experience these spinners had in the pitch that assisted spins, and they just brought to use English players. They did not change their approach, and they were made to pay. The wicket of Ben Stokes is prime example of how they approached the game. In the first inning, we saw a few overs from Ahmed Jamal, but it was back to spin from Pakistan. And after all this said, the 10 wickets, we saw entirety of second innings from Noman and Sajid. I think England lasted just for 34 overs, and Noman was excellent getting them out. Yes, England are known for going all out but I think they should be pragmatic with change in playing conditions as well. And with the preparations we've seen for the third test up and running, it will be interesting to see how they approach the game against these two spinners again.
Well, John, Subas mentioned England's approach there. It was a tremendous innings from Ben Duckett, and it appeared to set England on a path to being competitive in the test, but then two collapses set them on the road to ruin. Well, a lot has been made about that attacking approach, but was that the only way to go on a pitch that was always likely to produce a ball with your name on it as a batter, or was there another way?
Well, they say cricket's a great leveller. After they manned the stand, Root and Brook scored 52 and 23 respectively in the second match. Both bowled in the first innings and LBW in the second. Sweeping seems to be the modern shot in these conditions, and remarkably, Duckett scored 50% of his runs this way. I suspect that losing the toss was the most important factor, and the first collapse in England's first innings from 211 for 2 to 225 for 6 in just over 3 overs was really the most critical phase of the game.
Subas, what about Pakistan's approach? They needed that win so badly, but dropping 3 of their top players and playing veteran spinners on used surfaces, it's not a policy that's going to bring them long-term success, is it?
Brian, when you are in dire need of win, I think you just you have to think about the present and not the future. And Pakistan, I think they would do anything to get some wins under the belt at the moment. They're having a rough period off the pitch, and the results not coming will only make things worse. Dropping Babar, yes, it was a surprise decision, but Kamran scored a run to justify the decision. Now, how long will Babar and these 3 sit out, or who will they replace? It remains to be seen. One thing's for sure, I think it's not a long-term plan for Pakistan with all 3 sitting out.
John, the pluses for England in defeat did include fast bowler Bryden Carse with another 5 wickets in his second test after 4 in match 1 of the series. Is he the biggest positive of the tour so far from England's perspective?
Well, he's certainly positive, especially 5 wickets on a spinner's pitch. But let's not overlook the first test performances by Root and Brook in all the doom and gloom.
And Jack Leach as well, of course, who bowled superbly and took 7 wickets in the victory. So, yeah, plenty of positives for England, despite the fact that they did lose that second test. But what it means, of course, is that the third test is going to be a decider in the series. That's due to get underway on Thursday, the 24th of October, and we'll report back on it next time here at the Wicket. New Zealand won its first test in India since the 1980s in a remarkable opening match of the 3-game series against the hosts in Bengaluru. After the first day was washed out, India won the toss, batted first, and then they were rolled over for just 46, their lowest ever score on home soil. New Zealand replied with 402 off the back of a superb 100 by Rachin Ravindra and what turned out to be a crucial 8th wicket partnership of 137 with former captain Tim Southee. Despite that, India still looked on course to make life very difficult indeed for the Black Caps, as 150 from Sarfaraz Khan and 99 from Rishabh Pant took them to 408 for 3 at one stage before the second new ball saw them lose their last 7 wickets for just 54. Player of the match, Ravindra, with 39 not out, then helped Will Young shepherd New Zealand home to a win that ended a run of 4 consecutive test losses. Subas, I think it's fair to say that no one saw this result coming. Was it simply down to Rohit Sharma's error at the toss, batting on a pitch that initially gave ample assistance to the bowlers, or was there more to it than that?
It was surprised that India chose to bat in such overcast conditions. I think it was because they had 3 spinners in the lineup and thought their bowlers would not be as impactful in that conditions, but they simply outplayed by the quality of pace bowling from the Kiwis. I think the first inning was the difference in this match.
John, as the president and founding member of the Rachin Ravindra fan club, as regular listeners to this podcast will know, the great man's performance must have given you a very warm glow.
It certainly did. Tom Latham said that Ravindra's quiet composure settled the nerves of senior players during the second innings. But I think also, as we mentioned, for Tim Southee's performance, so unshackled by the cares of captaincy.
Yes, a superb performance by Southee. That partnership was indeed crucial in the final analysis. But Subas, let's give credit to 3 others in that New Zealand win. We've mentioned Southee already. in passing, but he and Will O'Rourke and Matt Henry, they each had a key role in the win with the ball. Henry with a fifer, including his 100th Test wicket in the first innings. Southey's quality bowling, as John mentioned, back to somewhere near his best. And O'Rourke, who was consistently hostile.
Indeed, we've seen bowled Southey Wagner in the past, but this test has further proved that the quality of bowling lineup that New Zealand are going to enjoy for some time now. Henry and O'Rourke, I think they're going into another solid partnership that New Zealand will enjoy. And if you look back a few years ago, nobody would have thought that Simmers could be doing this kind of performance in India, but this has happened. It is doubtful whether there will be similar pitches going forward in this series, but it is fantastic to see overseas bowler enjoying pace bowlers getting those wickets. Southey, with his experience, I think he adds up to the team. This time his batting was a huge plus, and that was the decider, supporting Ravindra in that first inning. That was pivotal. The way India came back, I think there were some chances, but once again, Henry and O'Rourke, they're going to do this for a long time.
John, all credit to Rohit Sharma, who owned his decision to bat first. He fronted up, actually, to a media conference at the end of that day's play. But looking at the India performance dispassionately, what would be your key takeaway? The collapse in the first innings, the fight back with Sarfraz and Pant, or the second innings collapse?
Well, for me, it'd be the second innings collapse. From 408 for 3 to 462 all out in 13 overs was a superb display by New Zealand's quicks. And on a helpful pitch, I think New Zealand were very thankful not to have to chase any more than 107.
John, are the collapses simply a reflection of the way modern batters go about their business? Is there a lack of an ability or willingness to grind things out, or is that way too simplistic?
Well, collapses have occurred throughout cricket's history, so it's not simply a feature of a modern approach. I'll give you a single example. England v Australia, Manchester, July 1961. England needing 256 for victory, collapsed from 150 for 1 to 201 all out. Benno, 6 wickets, bowling round the wicket. And I think this is collapsing is a very interesting topic, and it probably deserves more research in my view. There are clear psychological issues that come into play, coupled with the bowler's ability to induce collapses.
Yes, it is a very interesting topic indeed, and maybe one for a column of yours. Well, the second test starts in Pune on Thursday, the 24th of October. We'll report back on that next time here at the Wicket. The first of 2 tests between Bangladesh and South Africa is underway as we record this podcast, and we'll cover it off for you in our next episode. But it's off-field stories that have taken centre stage in the lead-up to the series, especially involving the home side. Coach Chandika Hathirasinghe was sacked by the Bangladesh Cricket Board, who made as yet unproven accusations that he'd assaulted a player and also that he'd taken too much time off. He was replaced immediately by former West Indies all-rounder Phil Simmons, a man with vast experience, having previously coached with not only West Indies but also Ireland, Zimbabwe, Afghanistan, and most recently as an assistant with Papua New Guinea at the T20 World Cup in the Caribbean. And on top of that, all-rounder Shakib Al Hassan, due to play his farewell test in the first match of the series, was left out after pro and anti-Shakib groups clashed over his inclusion. Remember, he was a member of parliament at the time of the uprising that led to regime change in the country earlier this year. John, let's deal with the Hathirasinghe issue first of all. I guess in one respect it's hardly a surprise, given that BCB President Farouk Ahmed, in his first media conference after taking the role in August, said he wanted a different coach. But the way the change has come about is truly bizarre, isn't it? What do you make of what's happened?
Well, when people in and of power decide they want personnel change, they will find a way, even if there's preventive legislation in place. Trumped-up charges and compliant accomplices often do the trick, with rights of recourse channels blocked off. I'm not saying that's the case here, but it bears familiar hallmarks.
Subas, what are your views on what's happened with Hathirasinghe? And is Phil Simmons a good appointment in his place?
Well, Simmons is a good coach and fits in Bangladesh. I feel Chandika's decision didn't give a good look to BCB and Bangladesh cricket overall. If the leadership wanted change anyway, there could have been better options to bring out an issue a year after it happened. And even then, it is unclear if it was of such gravity. The issues about taking unusual leaves and all. I think that doesn't look nice. There's no doubt Chandika has helped Bangladesh to get through a phase and put Bangladesh cricket a level ahead from what they were when they came. But he deserves a better sending off. And Simmons, I think it will be a hard time for him to start in such an environment.
Yes, a remarkable turn of events. And let's not forget, it's not that long ago since Bangladesh secured a 2-0 Test series win in Pakistan. But that seems to have been forgotten by many people in Bangladesh cricket. John, what about the situation with Shakib? He's become a very divisive figure, and not just in Bangladesh cricket, but in society too, judging by the rival protests ahead of the test. Do you have any sympathy for him? And despite the consistent controversies he's courted throughout his career, surely he deserves better than this as an end to his test career, doesn't he?
Well, we pondered last week on how he might be received, and were of the view that it depended on the balance between his supporters and opponents. The strength of feeling became apparent, not at the ground, but outside it, prior to the match, and as rival factions made their feelings very well known. In the febrile atmosphere of Dhaka and Bangladesh in general, the authorities decided the risk was too great, and they stopped Shakib's journey, apparently at Dubai. I sensed there would be a further twist in Shakib's tale. Do I have sympathy for a better finale? Not really. I think he created a rod for his own back.
Subas, what's happened with Shakib? Does it surprise you having to be stood down from the test? We talked about, as John mentioned, what reaction he might get if he played on our last episode.
Yeah, I suspected it was not cricket fans, but the general public that won the case. Maybe the right incorrect situation of the country. The issue has been politicized more than it deserved, but I think Shakib, the cricketer who served Bangladesh cricket all his life, deserved that farewell test. And the BCB, the way they didn't stand by him, shows they prepared for life after him already.
Sri Lanka fought back from a loss in their first 2020 international of their home series against West Indies in Dambulla to win the 3-game contest 2-1, and then they won the opening match of a one-day international series in Pallekele. Given the tour is taking place in what is traditionally the wettest month of the year in Sri Lanka, with flooding in some parts of the country, it was hardly a surprise that the first one-day international was rain-affected. The West Indies were certainly handicapped by that rain, as first the innings was halted with Sherfane Rutherford and Roston Chase in full flow, and then they were adversely affected, they felt, by a wet ball as Sri Lanka chased a Duckworth-Lewis stern-adjusted target. Kamindu Mendis, with 30 not out from 21 balls, rushed Sri Lanka home after captain Charith Asalanka made 77. The T20I series saw Sri Lanka win matches 2 and 3 to claim the silverware in Dambulla, as the touring side were bundled out for 89 in Game 2 and then felt the full force of Kushal Mendis and Kushal Pereira's bats as the duo made unbeaten 50s in a 9-wicket win. John, after we had England's so-called moral victory in the Drawn Ashes series of last year, West Indies coach Darren Sammy has gone a step further, and he's labelled the T20I series loss as one to mark up for a moral victory too. Is he right?
Well, it strikes me as a very curious statement. You could apply the same logic to England in Multan, playing on a pitch that had already been used for 5 days. Just look at the history of Test match cricket and cricket in general, when home authorities have produced favourable wickets for their own strengths. T20 cricket, especially franchise and the IPL in particular, produces wickets really for flat track bullies and bland formula-laden cricket. And I think that testing different skill sets on different wickets is part of the game's charm. The only concern for Sri Lanka, to which some refer, is how does Sri Lanka develop quick bowlers on such pitches? Now there's such a premium on winning, and Sri Lanka has been criticised for being serial losers. You can't have it both ways.
Yes, it's a fair point you make there, John. Perhaps as well, the statisticians in the cricket world need to make another column: win, loss, draw, and also moral victory. We can add that to the statistics from now on. Subas, Sri Lanka, they are enjoying a continued resurgence in the second half of this year. As John said, it's win, win, win. That's the priority, and it doesn't matter how it's achieved. But aside from the screen time this series is offering broadcasters, I just wonder, what is the value of this series taking place as it is in a time of year when cricket is never usually played in Sri Lanka.
Well, we saw Asia Cup held in Sri Lanka in the same time, and the rain was a major hindrance. Then the same has been the case. Maybe the series is set because no major franchise league are on this time of the year, and both teams are having their strong squad to field in. Such has been the change in recent times. Brian, franchise cricket is taking over, and the teams are trying to get the best squad with no players involved in elsewhere. So broadcasters, they're happy to get, because there's no much cricket going on elsewhere with Sri Lanka and West Indies involved. So I think that would be the reason that the game is getting played now.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that the remaining matches of the tour aren't too badly affected by weather. Anyway, by the time we record our next episode, the tour will be done and dusted, and we'll wrap it all up then here at the Wicket. As we record this podcast, we're 4 days into the group stage of the Asian Cricket Council Men's T20 Emerging Asia Cup in Muscat, Oman, a short-form tournament with the A teams of the 5 ICC full members in the region. That's Afghanistan, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. They're up against hosts Oman, Hong Kong and the UAE. In Group A is Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Hong Kong, while in Group B, the 4 teams are India, Pakistan, Oman and the UAE. After the group stage, there are crossover semi-finals with the runners-up in one group playing the winners of the other, and then the final is a day-night match on Saturday the 26th of October. The big game over the past weekend saw a large crowd for India's win over Pakistan, while Afghanistan made a flying start by winning their first 2 matches. The UAE beat Oman in the battle of the 2 associate sides in Group B as Saeed Haider, playing as a keeper batter, made 44 not out from 28 balls, while Tanish Suri, operating as a specialist batter after his retention by the Desert Vipers in the upcoming ILT20, he made 33 from 26 balls at the top of the order. Subas, just wondering, what have your impressions of the tournament been so far?
Well, the Afghanistan cricket, they've been continuing to impress, and the win against Sri Lanka, I think, was impressive, even more impressive against Bangladesh. Sadiqullah Tal getting near to that 100. And apart from that, India, they have announced a strong squad. Tilak Verma, Abhishek Sharma, they have been included in the squad, and we saw an excellent India versus Pakistan rivalry. So the emerging cup, I think ACC has built an excellent pathway, and it's only giving youngsters to show their chance, and Afghanistan is benefiting from it the most.
John, Subas mentioned Sadiqullah, the left-handed opener for Afghanistan A, 83 and 95 not out in the first couple of matches for him. Do you think we might see him in Sharjah for the senior side next month? They've got 3 one-day internationals then against Bangladesh.
Well, he's actually knocking on the door. He was named in the ODI squad in 2021 against Pakistan, series that was postponed. Made his T20 debut in the third and final match of the series v Pakistan in March 2023. And in May this year, he was named as reserve player in Afghan's squad for the Men's T20 World Cup. Perhaps T20 is where his opportunities will come.
And John, should we read anything into Afghanistan's early successes, given they came up against teams whose senior squads were engaged in international cricket elsewhere, and so their A teams consequently lacked a bit of experience? Or is it a case of credit where it's due?
A combination, I think. Afghanistan's wins were by 4 wickets with 4 or 5 balls to spare, and against Sri Lanka by 11 runs with 3 balls to spare. So very tight wins, and I think the main credit must be to Sadiq Ali's brilliance.
Well, we'll report back on the latter stages of the tournament, including the final, in our next episode. With Subas in our group, we can't let the opportunity to talk about Nepal go by, and so let's reflect on their men's side's 3-match 2020 international series against the USA in Dallas, a prelude to the next action in the ICC World Cup League 2 Tri-Series, with the 2 sides, the USA and Nepal, joined by Scotland for one-day internationals starting again in Dallas on Friday the 25th of October. Nepal have had a modest run of late. They lost 3 matches against Canada and Oman in King's City, as well as having 1 match rained off in their previous League 2 action last month. But 2020 internationals are a format they appear much more comfortable in, and, backed by a sizable following in Dallas, they won their series against the USA 3-0. In match 1, Nepal won by 17 runs, with captain Rohit Podel leading from the front. He made 49 from 33 balls, and with Dipendra Singh airy, they added 66 in 6 overs to get Nepal up to a defendable 164 for 9. Airy then took 3 for 27 with his off-spin, as the 7th bowler used by Podel, and although Shahan Jahangir made an unbeaten 60 from 34 deliveries, it wasn't enough for the home side. In Game 2, Sompal Kami was the hero, as he first forced a super over after taking 2 wickets in the final over, when the USA, with Andreas Gauswell set, required 7 to win with 4 wickets in hand. Then in that super over, Kami took 2 wickets in 4 balls, leaving Nepal just 3 to win. The touring side then wrapped up that clean sweep in Game 3 with a crushing 8-wicket win thanks to Asif Sheikh, Kushal Burtel and Kushal Mala's innings, after Kami again starred with the ball, taking 3 for 27. Subas, a great series win for Nepal, and just what was required after a dispiriting run of results. But does this erase the memory of those previous losses?
Well, the losses can't be overwritten, but I think T20I is game of momentum and Nepal are on a song. The second game was pick of all with that comeback. We say looked to be home midway through the second innings, but the team executed their plans really well, especially in the last over and the super over by Sompal, making most of the long boundary and forcing players to hit there. I think with NPL coming soon, it's great to see the batters. They're getting the runs. The team is performing very well as a unit, and I hope this continues in the ODI as well.
And Subas, it was interesting to see Paris Khadka, the former captain and now a prominent administrator at the Cricket Association of Nepal, tweet his praise afterwards, but also call for a renewed focus on the one-day international format with the next round of World Cup League 2 matches to follow. Does he have a point? Or should he allow everyone to revel in this series win?
He absolutely has a point. Nepal in dire need of some wins in the League 2 after failing to add up that solitary win. This will be our third series and we yet to get the second win. Last edition, we needed 11 out of 12 wins and magically that happened. But the team was determined from the start this season that this would not be the situation again. But that seems to be repeating. Only thing is we know that magic, they don't repeat itself. So it's time that the team gets some results in the USA in the favor. I know it's tough against Scotland and USA, but there has been some momentum with T20I series in the same ground. The series is set to be in the same ground, so expecting the same momentum.
And John, it's all been pretty much rosy in the garden for the USA since Stuart Law took over as coach earlier this year in the run-up to the T20 World Cup. And this is really the first bump in the road since that point. What went wrong for the USA this time around, do you think, and can they get past it?
Seems like the batting got off on the wrong foot in the first match. And the second match with a super over could have gone either way. Nepal seem to have played very well with particularly economical bowling. T20, as we've discussed, is a bit of a lottery, so I think it may well be just a blip in the road for the USA.
Well, the World Cup League 2 tri-series involving the USA, Nepal and Scotland, and let's remember that Scotland are the defending champions in this particular competition. That'll get underway on Sunday, the 27th of October, and we'll chat about that next time. Amidst the glitz and glamour of the Women's T20 World Cup in the UAE, 2 other women's teams have been fighting it out in another part of the world, with the USA touring Zimbabwe. As we record this podcast, Zimbabwe have won the first 2 matches of a 5-match one-day international series. In the first game, they chased down the USA's 152 with 15 overs and 3 balls, as well as 5 wickets in hand, before a second win when they overcame the USA's 248, and the victory there was by 6 wickets with 9 balls left unused. John, given Zimbabwe struggled in recent series against both Papua New Guinea and Ireland, and yet have secured comfortable wins here in the first 2 matches, does this hint at improvement, or should we not place too much significance on the wins and the scale of them?
Well, I think it would seem to hint improvement. In the first match, Zimbabwe lost 2 early wickets, chasing 152, but the middle order was very solid to secure the victory. And the same middle order showed consistency in match 2, building on a start made by opening batter stroke keeper Modesta Muchapiquika. So on top of that, the bowlers kept the chase down to achievable targets. So I think there's room for optimism there for Zimbabwe.
And Subas, as someone who's spent time around cricket in the USA this year, are you disappointed by the results in those first 2 matches from a USA perspective? Or should we just be happy that both sides are providing opportunities for their players to learn and improve in an international environment?
Well, we know the women's cricket in the region is not as active. Even in the World Cup, I found a few women's team player volunteering during the World Cup because there was not much cricket. So the more the matches, the merrier for them. While there's very little domestic cricket, these players need to play to get the experience in order to perform in the bigger occasions. And more than the result, I think the focus should be on making most of these opportunities, and that's what they are doing at the moment.
Well, the series will be concluded on Monday, the 28th of October, and so we'll reflect on it next time. And finally, gentlemen, as we always do, let's hear from you about something that's caught your attention this week in the world of cricket. John, first of all?
Well, a bit of bowling interest, really. Marnus Labuschagne bowling 13 overs of seam up for Queensland versus South Australia. But more notably, Kagiso Rabada reaching 300 wickets in tests. He took the wicket to Mushfiqur Rahim. He managed the feat in 11,817 balls, the fastest of all time, beating the great Waka Yunis, who achieved the feat in 12,602 deliveries. And Rabada's the 39th player to pass the landmark.
Incredible achievement by Kagiso Rabada. Let's remember that, of course, he exploded to prominence with South Africa under-19s when they won the under-19 World Cup in the UAE, and that was a decade ago, and here he is now with 300 plus test wickets to his name. Tremendous effort from him. Subas, what's tickled your fancy?
Well, Ali Khan and Nepal fans, the love's not lost. We saw some glimpses of it. Ali Khan ending on the losing side this time. There we saw the Dallas crowd. Even though the match is played in USA, we can see the Nepalese crowd never fails to impress. So expecting similar scenes in the ODI series, and Ali Khan versus Nepalese fans, the story continues.
Yes, Ali Khan, part of a very strong USA side that was beaten in that T20I series. So that's to be looked forward to with more matches there in Dallas. And we will, of course, report back here at the Wicket. Well, that's all for this episode. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. As ever, please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on what you've heard wherever you get your podcasts. But in the meantime, this is Brian Murgatroyd along with Jon Pike and Subas Humagain saying thanks so much for listening. And until next time, goodbye.
Hey, goodbye.
Goodbye.